Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this introduction. I want to bring this idea or this tool actually closer to you. And I must say I'm not an expert on this tool. Let's say I haven't found it, but I've learned today that actually Mr. Professor from Office, that they have done so. So I believe after you have heard my presentation, you are all experts on SGAM, on the smart grid architecture model. If this is not the case, I'm sure answers or questions can be answered by Office much better than I can do. If we talk about smart grids, and if you ask somebody what is actually a smart grid, then typically the ideas are very much different. So is it a virtual power plant? Are we talking about blockchain? Are we talking about smart meters and so on? So there's a big difficulty. What is actually a smart grid? What are you talking about? ADMS, tariffs, storage, automation, flexibility, smart meter cells, on-load tap changing. DMS, I learned DSM, demand side management, has some other meaning, DSM here in India as well. So actually, I do see there is actually some kind of chaos there. And the smart grid, or the SGAM, is actually a reference model to escape this smart grid chaos. So it can be used to ensure common understanding between different stakeholders. So if you're talking about something and you're using the SGAM, or the smart grid architecture model, then you will be able to understand what the other person means, basically. It is used for, it can be used to enable the structured analysis of smart grid use cases, or to visualize and compare different approaches to smart grid architectures, paradigms, roadmaps, and viewpoints, and also to identify, and that's what originally it was developed for, standards and standardization gaps. In general, we can say the SGAM is a tool to cope with complexity of smart grids, and as I said, I did not found it, but the European Smart Grid Coordination Group, where Office was also part of. So let's have a look how it actually looks like. It starts, or it's about a smart grid plane you can see here. I hope you can see it, where we have an information management area over here, different zones. We have the process line here, the power system equipment and energy conversion. And let's have a look. Okay, the animation works. What the different domains actually mean. We have the generation, which can be bulk generation, or is actually here thought of like large-scale generation, nuclear power, large renewable energies. Transmission, we're talking about, well, the transmission system, distribution system, and decentralized energy resources here, which are then integrated, for example, in virtual power plants. And also we have the so-called prosumers. There's also, of course, industrial, commercial, home facilities meant here, including PV, electric vehicle storage, for example. So this is one part of this plane. And now let's move to the other side, to the zones. There, we can differ between markets. For example, energy trading, mass market, retail market, for example. Enterprises, workforce management to be mentioned here, staff training, customer relation management, for example. Operation, it's about power system control, microgrids, virtual power plants, which can be here included. The station, substation automation, SCADA system, for example, which would be in this zone. And the field, what kind of protection, for example, controller are you actually using, which is in the information layer. And finally, of course, the process itself, where the generators, transformers, circuit breakers, and electrical loads are situated. So this is the smart grid plane, basically. But believe me, this is not all. We have two dimensions. There's another one. So we are introducing some layers on it. There is the business layer on top. So in order to identify business cases, especially, that's what will happen there. Then we have the function layer. This is more about use cases, describes use cases. We have the information layer, which is then describing the data model, for example. the communication layer, how to transfer actually this data, and finally, of course, the physical distribution of the components, so the electrical flow of the electricity or the electricity flow, and also the communication flow. So now you know about this system. There is no fourth dimension, I must say. Well, there is kind of some, but I've left it out. But let's look into an example now, knowing, okay, this is how to do it. And for this, I have just chosen a very simple one, a distribution system monitoring. So here again, you can see the zones. We are in one of the layers. There are the domains. Can't really read it, unfortunately, I believe. Can you see the, no, you cannot? Okay, I can do it this way, just a second. I have a laser pointer. There we are, okay? That's better. So here are the zones again, I have described earlier. Here are the domains. And we are now talking about distribution, that's here, but also if we are in a distribution system, decentralized energy resources, consumers are involved. And this primary use case I have identified here are the distribution system operator who wants basically to monitor his distribution system. So how does it work? We're now going in the different layers, starting with the function layer. So we need, of course, measurements from the grid. That's happening in the field level, basically. Then we need to concentrate this. We need to get the data, and that's what's happening at the station level. And finally, a SCADA system where all the data is collected in order to visualize, archive the monitored data. So that's on the function layer, talk about the use cases. Now we're going one layer down into the information layer. For example, well, this is an example I'm showing to you. We could we have to define what is the data model we are using. So here it is IEC 61850 used where we said, okay, we want to have the power, the reactive power, the voltages, the frequency to transport. And then it needs to be stored somewhere. Here it is the data format IEC 61968 used as an example. It could be others as well. Then go again one layer down and say, okay, what about the communication link? So we are in the communication layer now. And in the example, we're using Ethernet, again, IEC 61850. Then for transferring the data to the SCADA system, Wi-Fi is used in this example. And finally, within the SCADA system, again, IEC or Ethernet 61968 as an example. So the last layer, the component layer, we need, of course, then the RTU, we need the substation automation controller, and the control center. So we could as well place certain products from certain companies. I did not put this in here. So that's it. We are done. Basically, we have done our first SGAM use case. Well done. But then, suddenly, the regulator says, okay, that's nice, but I want to have reports on system interruptions, for example. So now you say, okay, I have to start from the beginning. No, that's not the case. You can actually continue on your work and just say, okay, communication or information layer, I just go and add further parts on this, especially in the enterprise and in the market zone, the domain here, okay? Zone. So that's happening on the information layer where I can add the data model. Then the same for the communication layer. I add here, for example, transferring via the internet the data to the regulator, and also from the components, like having a web server. I think you can't really read it from there, so which is added basically here. So fairly simple, also flexible, just to extend your project. So let's come already to a conclusion, really fast run through the SGAM system. As I mentioned at the beginning, the smart grid architecture model is a complex model for a complex topic, and I believe it is actually a helpful model for still, I believe, really complex topic, that's for sure, and it allows basically to get some structure in this smart grid topic. If you want to read more, assuming you're not a SGAM expert yet, I have put some links, and I think we will distribute the slides also to you. Especially, I want to point out there's a toolbox, scamtoolbox.org, which can be used freely in the internet, where you can also set up these pictures I have shown to you. And also the manual, for example, given here with the link, is quite nice to understand what is SGAM about. So, thank you very much for your attention.